The following program contains adult language, poor taste in jokes, racial slurs, political slurs, slants, and all sorts of things that if you are sensitive and have a delicate constitution, you should probably go watch Teletubbies. You were warned.
Hey kids, welcome back to Roto Talk.
Kids, welcome back to another gloomy ass cold where I live Monday afternoon, and the weather is just, I'm over it. Over the weather. So here we go. What I did last we left off on the last chapter, we were putting the sides on. Okay, I put the other side on like I promised. And I did not sand this one yet. Still has the lip, still has the edge. This side, we sanded. Now, I did take some wood putty, did some fill right where the gap is for that, because when I epoxy this down, I don't like to have the huge gap there, like a little bit something behind it. You don't have to do that, just what I do. And that's still curing. That's the wood putty. That's not my fiberglass stuff that we usually use. It's no big deal. It's just taking up space right there. So you can see this edge is flush with the chine, the lower chine, all the way back. Okay. So what you want to do when you sand this is you want to make darn sure at that angle. See that? You see those bulkheads? You need to take a little bit more off of the keel. All right, but not bad. All right. So you want to make sure that that chine and this edge are sanded, and this is because you got to think about it. You're putting your boat sides on, the bottoms, not the sides, sorry, and they're going to be laying nice and straight. If these aren't straight, then you're going to get warpage, all right, and that's going to make you do that number going down the water, or porpoise. So you don't want that. You want that to be as straight as possible. So take yourself a nice straight sanding block. Again, 2x4 piece of aluminum. 2x4 is poor man's way. It works pretty good. And then you want to put a little bit of a chamfer edge on the keel. Do not change the height of the keel. It doesn't like that. Okay? So just put a nice light edge. We're going to reinforce where it glues to the keel after we take the boat off the jig and flip it over. I lay more epoxy on there because when we set this up, you're just going to be putting little bits and bobs of epoxy right here on this edge, and that's not, in my opinion, enough. So when we flip it over after they're on, then we're going to put a fillet all the way down. Okay? So, but before we get that far, now you can see on this side, we got the edge. See that edge? Okay, so this side is not sanded yet. So I did that on purpose because I wanted you to see what it looks like sanded and what it looks like not sanded. This keel side hasn't been edged down. So what I will do, I'm going to take a little bit more angle on this keel before we glue this on. And that's really going to be about it. Then we're going to clamp it down. I'll show you how to do all that, but we got to do some other things first. So get this nice and blended. Take your time. This is important. If you're going to screw up anything on a boat, don't screw up the bottom. Bad things will happen. Telling you, take your time on the bottom. Even if your boat looks like shit on the top, it ain't running on the top, it's running on the bottom, right? You don't want square tires on your boat. So what we do then, knock off these end edges right here on the ends, all right? Take yourself some sandpaper, some 220 or whatever you want to use, and then we make sure this is nice and flat and sanded. Then we're going to take this. This is basically your transom doubler with your pre-drilled hardware mounts, okay? Very important on this particular boat, even though it looks bilateral, okay? Like a butterfly, bilateral, left and right, okay? Symmetrical is identical, bilateral is offside. Even though it looks totally bilateral, it doesn't run that way with the setup because it has an offset shaft. That shaft's going to come out over here, not straight out the center. This particular boat, ZippKits designed to have an offset shaft so it counteracts prop rotation or prop torque, so the boat doesn't have as bad of a walk to it, okay? So if you look in the manual, there's a picture of how this goes. Let me see if I can find a manual. So when the boat's upside down, you can see the hole is favoring the left. It's because it's offset to the right. Okay? You gotta remember your boat's upside down. Okay? So again, that's why I put an F on here. And then all you're gonna do is make sure this baby's lined up nice and even like. Okay? Focus on the top. Make sure you're aligned to the sides. You don't want a gap on any of the sides. Right? And you want your tops to line up. This is a really simple process. Just grab yourself some clip clamps or whatever kind of clamps you want, and then we're just going to wood glue it. That's all we're going to do. Okay? And this one, you definitely want to put on a fair amount. Okay? Doesn't matter if you get it in the holes, because you're going to have to drill through these holes anyway, because this side of the stern is not drilled. I mean, try not to do it too bad. Alright. Whatever. Or take a brush and do it that way. And I'm going to go ahead and seat this off. I know you can't see it probably. Same trick. Wiggle it back and forth. Make sure your edges are nice and even. And then I put 2 clamps on the top. Check, check, recheck, and check, check again. Okay? Do not want this off. Okay? Alright. That's it. That's how it should look. Don't worry about the glue in the holes. You're going to be drilling through those anyway. It's alright. Okay? Then we're going to let that sit for, I don't know, 30 minutes, half hour. I need to let this putty down here dry, so I'm going to flip it around so the putty's near the heater, and that should dry it out fairly quickly. So we'll give us a little bit of time. Be right back. Alright, we are back. Okay, so everything should be cured up. Yeah, and that's it. So we got our back transom doubler on, and now we're just going to set the first bottom sheet. This boat's almost done.
I'm afraid!
Don't be afraid!
No. Be afraid. Be very afraid.
Construction-wise. Okay, so we're just going to do this side first. I went ahead and I redid the angle, made it a little bit more severe on the keel, sanded this side down. Make sure after you put on your doubler that you sand this back down to make sure it's nice and groovy, which I might hit a couple more times here. Okay. This Ace Hardware sandpaper is shite. It sucks. It does not hold up. I think it's Ace. Yeah, don't buy this crap. It sucks. I was in a pinch. I don't usually buy it from there, but yeah, anyway. So, this is very similar to... hang on. Very similar to what we did with the cracker. It's a little trickier on the clamping, just because it's more severe of an angle, but not too hateful. All right. So, what you're going to do is you're going to line up. The name of the game here is to center. So, you can see there's our stern transom. You want to be all the way up on there, leveled out, and then in the middle of this seam of the keel as much as you can. Now, shouldn't be too far off. You don't need any overhang on the back. You will have overhang on the side. So what we're going to do, this is how I usually do it. I'll take a clamp, whatever clamp you want to use, doesn't matter. And I'll just clamp the back, give it a little bit of overhang, and then clamp it up just with one clamp, kind of on the end. The reason I do that is I want to be able to pivot it, because you got a point here, a point here, a point, and then the middle here. So we're going to push this up And that looks about perfect right there. Okay, good overhang. So, yeah, that'll work. Okay, so then what you want to do, if you want to, we're going to mark you can mark it better than what I'm doing here, but it doesn't have to be 1000% perfect. All right. And that's it. That's all we're going to do. Then, if you want, what I do suggest, if this is your first build, go ahead and dry clamp the whole thing. Get it in your head how you're going to clamp this out. Because even though you're using 30-minute epoxy or 30 weight, it still goes quicker than you think. And when you get it all on there, and by the time you get this done, get this end down here done, then it's starting to warm up a little bit, and then you're trying to fiddle fart around with getting the board where you want it, and then you got to put all the clamps on it. It adds up. So be careful. All right, work quickly, as quick as you can, and doing it as quick as you can usually means pre-clamping it, because then you kind of get an idea in your head of how you want to clamp this. Okay, so this, just like the cracker box, this one's easier. This side, well, either side, but the first one you do is easiest because you can clamp it here, you can clamp it here, you can clamp it here, all the way along the keel really easily. Okay, the problem is when you put on the other side, just like the cracker box build we did, you can't do it that way. So you have to rely solely on weights. So what I will do is I'll clamp this down with normal clamps, here, 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 all the way down the keel and the nose. Then I'm going to clamp it all the way down the side. A way that you can do it without using a zillion clamps, believe it or not, masking tape. You can literally put the masking tape here, pull it around, fasten it to the other side. I do that when I do have a place that I just can't get a clamp in. If you look in the manual, Joe at ZippKits uses PVC plumbing. Take 2-inch PVC pipe, cut a slit in it, cut it about 1 inch wide, so it's a 1 inch wide ring, kind of like that. And then he just cuts a slit in it, and then it opens up, with tension, and then you can clamp it right on these sides. But I have yet to ever do that, but it is a good idea. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to mix up some 30 weight. And then I'm going to apply glue only this side, this side, this side, okay? Down the middle, just like the cracker was the same way. And then we're going to put some epoxy here, and then a nice fair amount here. And again, always double check, make sure your edges are nice and smooth, okay? Make sure everything's good. You don't want any bumps. I don't feel anything too terrible, okay? Make sure this is sanded nice and smooth. You don't want this like sticking up and bumping up your gig. So I'm going to go ahead and epoxy this in. I'm not going to do it on camera. Maybe I will. Yeah, I will. What the hell. So I'll be right back. Let me prep up. So I'm going to be using weights. Now for weights, you can use anything in your house. Go out and get some cement blocks, cinder blocks from Lowe's, like those paving blocks you get for your garden and stuff. Those are great weights. You don't have to use workout weights like I do. Use whatever you got laying around. Use a couple of your grandkids, your kids, whatever. Have them sit on there for 6 hours. Be fine. I am going to mix this properly, which I very seldomly do, as you guys know. I'm going to go up to 10. Now, it's better when you're doing the sides, when you're doing the bottoms, whatever. When you're doing a large piece, it's better to have too much than not enough. Because what happens is, one will start, so say you run out of epoxy, that's a lot of epoxy. Say you run out of epoxy, and like right here, then what do? This is way too much, but that's okay, I'm just proving a point. Then what do? You got to stop, and then you got to remix, and you got to do it, and now this epoxy down here is hitting pot life, and this is going to be fresh up here, and you can't just go over the old epoxy with new. Do not do that. Bad things will happen.
Your suffering will be legendary.
It's scary. So, that's that. So I'd rather just waste a little bit. And, you know, you could always reinforce some joints with it or something like that. You don't have to waste it necessarily. But especially when I'm doing decks, you don't want to screw up your deck because, or the bottom, obviously, or any of it. But the deck especially, too, because you want it to look good. All this work, you don't want it to look like a bag of ass, you know. All right, so I think what we're going to do, I'm just going to shoot the shit while we do this. I'm going to order some fairly hot yellow paint, I think. I don't have a lot of yellow boats anymore. I used to have, I think I got one. My Lego boat's yellow. So we're going to do yellow with this. And my buddy in our chat group that we started, Jeff, is going to sell me a brand new engine. He had bought a couple engines because I decided with this boat, this build, I wanted to use all new gear. So I wasn't really sure if I was going to do or not. And so I talked to Joe last night. Said, hey, I'm going to place an order. It says such and such is out of stock. He goes, yeah, we'll have them tonight. So I'll probably place that order tonight for hardware. But my buddy Jeff in our chat group's like, hey, I've got two brand new engines. One's a mod, Gizmo mod, and one's this, whatever. I was like, hey, shoot me a price, brother. I'll buy. If you want to part with one, I'll definitely buy it off you. So thank you, Jeff, from our group, sending me a hot engine. It's going to be cool. Just have to send him a big truckload of money. Money, money, money. And we'll have a nice brand new engine. Be a pretty hot engine too. For this boat, you gotta remember, this boat is a sparrow fart. This thing weighs nothing. Okay, it takes nothing to power this boat. So we're gonna be putting a fairly nice motor in here. So, and I was also talking to the guys in the chat group the other day. Can't remember who it was. We have a good old time in there. And we were talking about YouTube and channels and things like that. And I said, you know, in the 5 years I've been doing this, when I started off with quadcopters, and all that jazz, 5 years ago I think it was, around there, I said, you know, I've never once in one video ever said, please like this video and hit subscribe. Like, it just felt wrong to do. It's like, if people like your shit, they're going to just naturally do it. If they're into what you're doing, you know, why beg for that stuff? I don't get it. It's like, please like me. Please, it helps me. It helps my stats. Even if you think that I'm a complete pinko suck-ass, please like and subscribe. Screw that. People are going to, like, people have no brains. Like, they're going to do it on their own if they like your stuff. But the one thing I will advertise is join our chat group. We have a good deal of fun in there. We talk about, it's not just about boats. It's called RC, or JJ Roto Geeks RC Marina. We talk about 3D printing. We talk about life. We talk about our families sometimes if you're in the mood. We talk about RC boats, RC cars, RC planes, RC. Pretty cool. Good bunch of guys. It's we're about 10 of us in there. We have fun. We all come and go. All right, try to clean this up best you can. No big deal. Miss anything? All right, so same rule applies. It's getting warm already. So we're going to take our side. I'm going to do the same principle. Now, the trick of this is it gets really slick. Okay? So it's going to want to walk on you a little bit. So I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm going to clamp the back. Well, maybe. Let's make sure we're on the peak. Right at the top. That way we've got a nice, good pivot point. It's just how I do it. And I'm going to make sure we all line up. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to put a couple holding clamps. I might move them later, but this is to at least hold my position. Okay. Going to the doctor tomorrow with a snotty ass nose. I don't know, I developed allergies or something along the lines here not long ago and sound like shit. Alright. Bada bing, I like that. So what I do, there are different schools of thought on where to clamp, how to clamp, and whatever else. There's this runner on this side. I'm going to put one right there, maybe. There we go. Okay. It's like, here's how I do it. I clamp like a third on the top, then a third on the bottom, third on top. That way it just kind of waves it out. And that should work fairly well. The trick then is to figure out which clamps you need to make it jive. So I'm going to take another bar clamp, put it right here. I understand you probably can't see what I'm doing. And clean up that mess in the back. If you've got drips, at least try to smooth them out. It makes sanding a whole lot easier. Okay. Oops, shit the bed. See, then that happened. All right. There we go. All right. And also watch the strength of your clamps, because if you use a really strong clamp, that can be bad. So I'm going to use some of these dudes that Joe gave me for this. Now, make sure you're not putting it on top of epoxy, or else it's going to be part of your boat, and that would be a bad day at the zoo, like I always say. So this is an exceedingly strong clamp. All right, and then again, God gave you a head. Use it. Okay. So I am going to, just so I can concentrate on this a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the camera, and I'll show you what we end up with. Be right back. Right, how's that for creative clamping? Look at this mess. Okay. Now, the trick is positioning. Make sure you're in the right spot, and make sure you've got no gaps. You want this thing nice and tight. If you're like one of those really clickety guys, you might have the exact same clamp all the way down and have like 50 of them, and then 50 of them on this side. I don't. I go with what works. I almost always use a bar clamp on the end, and then I just go. So what you want to do is look underneath this lip right here, this eave, and make sure it's nice and tight all the way across. If it is, you're good. If you see gaps, clamp it. Clamp it, clamp it, clamp it. The end is a bit tricky, obviously, but other than that, not too bad. So we're going to let this cook for about all night actually, and then tomorrow I'm going to do the other side exact same way, except I'll have mostly weights on it, okay, because we won't be able to do this clamping on the top. So we'll have mostly weights and clamps on the bottom, which is pretty easy to do, actually. So until then, and then after that, I'll probably slap some putty on the nose, and we'll pop it out of the jig and flip it over, and then we're ready to put the top on pretty close. So till tomorrow, hopefully. Keep dry side up. Bye.